Here in council chambers, the executive session is over and we resume our public meeting. First agenda item is resolution 2024-25, adopting the alternative tax budget. Joe, you want to remind everyone what this annual event is?
Thank you, Mayor. Every year at this time, we pass this resolution. It gives the County Budget Commission a starting point for them to build the official certificate for the city. And per Ohio Revised Code, the purpose of it is to assure that the city does not appropriate more funds than they have available to spend. Probably stemmed with maybe when Cleveland went bankrupt 100% at one time. For this exercise, I just go into our 5-year plan and I extract the numbers from 2025 and put them in. Later in the year, we will get our first official certificate. And then early January, when we're actually closing out 24, and based on the budget that we pass for 25 for city council, I'll be making changes to that so it ties to where we are. So this is just the first go around, and all I do is take the numbers off the 25 5-year plan.
25 or 24?
25.
Okay.
Yeah, 24 is already set.
Okay.
So they'll
It's
give
always
us,
the next year.
right, and just hypothetically, we're gonna spend 10 million in the general fund, because that's what the 25 says right now.
Mhm.
Well, as we're building the budget, it becomes 10.2 million. I'll be making those changes in January, and they'll give me an amended
I got you.
certificate, and the
I got you.
auditors use that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that explanation.
So Joe, the lead-in memo, there's really nothing changed for this year in terms of what we're doing this.
This has nothing to do with this year.
Okay.
This has
No, well,
100% for 25,
you know, but changes in the process that we're enacting tonight. This is the same
No.
thing we've done
every year.
every year.
So that they can be building for next year.
Yeah.
They need to be constructing that now, apparently. Okay, now I got it.
And Joe, just a question. I'm looking at Schedule 3. We have unvoted GO obligation debt. Is this is the complete list of non-assessment debt outstanding right now? Or should, no, it's not.
This is the complete list of funds that receive real estate taxes.
Okay. And there are GO bonds that do not receive those?
No, they're within the bond retirement fund.
So what am I on page, on this
You're at
page?
Schedule 1.
I'm on this page here.
It says Schedule 1 at the top, right?
Schedule 3.
That's all our debt.
That's all the GO debt,
No, that's all the debt within the city.
including assessment debt.
Correct.
And so the assessment, just looking at this, so what's on here that is not assessment? Just, just a matter of my own interest.
Well, part of the 2007 Brainerd Road,
Okay. Part of that is not
G-
assessment.
non-assessment.
Anything else?
A small piece of the 2008, a small piece of the 2010,
Okay,
both 2010s,
okay,
a small piece of 2009,
okay.
and both the OPWCs.
RGO.
Yep.
Okay, all of those?
Yep.
Okay,
And back when this debt was issued, you guys are familiar with the fact that when we do a sewer project, the city is committed to pay 2%
a slice, yeah,
plus intersections.
okay. And then
In the past, they went out and bonded the whole thing.
and the last two,
I only bond the special assessment to keep it 100% special assessment.
and the last two are special assessment.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm confused. The two OPWC loans, those have special assessments or don't?
No,
They do not, okay.
they're just straight all.
So
jail.
everything but those has some assessment to it on this list.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Not at 100%, but a majority.
And most of those, where there is a little piece of it is Pepper Pike. Is that the 2% generally, or of the total number, or something like that?
The 2% and probably any intersections on those roads.
Okay, which would, if you added those up, it'd be 3% or 4% or something small like that, though.
It is small, but obviously depending on the size of the project.
Sure.
Or depending on the size of the intersections.
Okay, great, thank you.
So one question on that, as long as you're on that page, as they start rolling off in 27, 28, 29, we start to have a lot. Will we be replacing these, do you think, with similar, is that what you anticipate? Or do you think that there were?
Replacing this debt with other debt.
Yes, I mean, obviously, we're
No.
going to always have new debt somewhere, but I mean, this seems like it happened more frequently at one point in there.
No, truly, we will only have new debt that I see based on sewer projects that we do.
Okay.
If Northeast Regional shuts down their program of providing a grant and we take a step back, we won't be issuing debt.
Okay.
Unless it's the OPWC 0% and why not?
Right.
It's free money. But short of that, we will not be issuing that.
Okay. Because it looks like at one point in time there, they were doing it more frequently. I don't know why.
It's
Yeah.
07, 08. We had,
Right.
07, 08.
we had to.
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
7, 8, and 10.
Yeah, we had no money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Can we have a motion
Or to adopt.
to adopt?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Atruk?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Bogan? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
yes,
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Okay, next, we return to a motion to authorize the engineer to start the bid process for the Lander Road pedestrian trail. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Atruk?
Were we planning on discussing this at all, or we're
Oh, I'm
just-
sorry. Is there any more discussion?
Like, I don't know if anybody in the group wanted to before we.
If you want discussion, go.
I'm good. I just was checking.
Fair point.
Yes.
No, but I always say it.
I know. I was like, oh,
Words.
Ms.
I
Atruk?
was so excited we were recapturing all that time. from last week.
We're really moving at a fast pace. Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Bogan? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Okay. Next, a motion to authorize the engineer to start the bid process for the Gates Mills Boulevard multipurpose trail. This, just to remind council, you may recall that I had talked about that MKSK would be here this evening. They decided there was some additional tweaking. They wanted to do their plan before they came to council. So that's why they are off the agenda. However, it's really like two parallel tracks moving ahead on that. That Don can explain more. The trail is something that Don designs, and council's been seeing that and all these iterations that you've seen over time. That hasn't changed. MKSK has basically worked with Don, and they're very comfortable with this. This is the path layout. The park itself that will surround that is the design process that is still ongoing. You are not being asked and you are not voting on that tonight at all. This is simply so that we can get the construction-wise, are two separate things also. So
This is the asphalt trail.
this is the asphalt trail.
All the
only.
accoutrements around it, we will be reviewing and voting on later.
Yes.
So my concern with that, and when I saw this was pulled, I was really troubled because I feel like it is one project, and I've long been supportive of this project. I believe in this project, but I believe in it when it's done to a high level and really, really well. And my concern with going ahead with this piece without the other piece all fleshed out and locked in is that we won't end up with that result. We're going to end up with some kind of half measure. We'll find out it's either too expensive and we won't work through it. I mean, I was really frustrated that MKSK came to us without us being able to give any input ahead, or even without knowing we were contracting with them. Even though I thought their presentation was very nice and I overall liked it, I would have liked to have given them some input about our community and the people who live along the trail and the people who will use the trail. So my concern really, and by the way, that's with me asking about, and I don't mean to belabor this point, but be asking about preparing to talk about the Gates Mills Trail for over a year and a half. And literally, as a point I made to ask about it every meeting from basically the last summer through the end of the year. And we didn't touch it. And then all of a sudden it was on the agenda, 11th hour, just like, however, whatever iterations of the agenda there were. Today there were 5, by the way. There were 5 iterations of today's agenda. I just feel like we are at risk of not doing this well because we're rushing ahead with part of it and putting in the path without the rest of the plan in place seems to me kind of like poor work process and a way to get a really, really substandard result. I also wanted to mention that,
Okay.
I just want to mention one more thing. It's almost the identical scenario that happened last week with the Lander, with the revisions or changes on this building. Didn't know we engaged with an architect, didn't get a chance to give the architect any input. Now we spent all this time, or the architect did, and all this money, and we're not where we necessarily want to be. And that's my fear for this project. It's the same thing almost exactly 2 weeks in a row. No council input, no council update that we were even engaging with an expert to design either this building or the trail. So to me, it would be worth tabling it, hearing MKSK do their presentation, fine-tuning it, and then as a package, just like you would for any project in your own home, then move forward with a complete project. I don't want to delay it any more than anybody. I've been trying to get this to move for at least 18 months. So I'm frustrated, but I just don't think that being frustrated or having it come to us at the 11th hour is a reason to risk not doing it well. That's my piece. I would suggest that we table it at this point and wait till we can hear from MKSK, feel like we have a solid plan. That doesn't mean a perfect plan. That doesn't mean it couldn't be tweaked, but a solid plan, then move forward as one whole piece. That's my opinion.
I appreciate that. I'd like to hear from Don, how this would affect you.
Yeah, I think maybe that I don't want to draw any parallels between the council chambers layout initial discussion and the path, because the path has been shown to council. We've shown the layout. MKSK used our design for the layout of the path when they came in here and presented their initial landscaping thoughts and gave, different layouts for the trailheads and all of that additional work. But the path itself, the layout of the path, is completely designed, and it's an engineered process. It is not something that you put in the hands of a landscape architect. They do not design the geometry of the trails. That falls on my shoulders. What we do is we coordinate with them, much like if you're building a house, picking out the couches is not something that drives the entire design of the house. It's a secondary thing, and it's not to say that their process isn't important, but they're relying on us to design the trail in the right location, at the right grades, at the right slopes, to be pleasant and aesthetically attractive. And then they work around that trail layout to put their pieces on. They've gone through a few iterations, and they've been in front of this body with those iterations to show what some of their thoughts and colors and materials and all that stuff. So The piece that we're trying to bid out is really the foundation. This is the base piece that has to get done, and then they will add to that. And just as a matter of, how we would bid this out contractually, typically the company that comes in and does the landscaping is not the paving company. So if we bid this as a singular project, which I wouldn't encourage, but if we did, you're going to pay a premium because the prime contractor is probably going to be the paving company, and then he's going to hire a landscaper to do the work and then charge markup on it. We'd be much better off, and I think the right approach, and our approach has been from the beginning, is pave the project, do the heavy duty paving of the road of the trail, and then hire another contractor to do the retaining walls and the landscape and the plantings and the grasses and the different types of finishes. So that's really the game plan, and I think that's how we've worked with the landscape architect in preparing their plans. We gave them the layout 6 months ago.
Don, can you talk about what drove your layout, kind of from a design and engineering standpoint, and how you optimized that? And the reason I'm asking that question is, and we've seen that layout, but the reason I ask the question is there anything in your imagination that would cause that to change for some reason other than some reason that the park designers would come up with?
Short answer is no.
Okay.
If you, I actually put together a couple of slides if you want to take a quick look at just.
Yeah, can I just make one point though? Because I think maybe my point was misunderstood. I'm not expecting MKSK to design the path at all. I understand clearly that it's designed and I like it and I have no problem with it. I also am not expecting these things to be bid together. I would never think that would happen. I am merely saying that the path without a nice aesthetic is not a nice path. It's exactly what we promised the community we would not do. And my fear is until we see the whole picture, we don't know how to make it, we can't ensure that. And once it's the ball starts rolling, it's going to happen. And we could end up with a path with a couple small stick-like trees and a few rocks next to it, because that's what, when we finally get the numbers behind it, which we haven't gotten, and it's going to be expensive. We just need to know what it is so we can thoughtfully and thoroughly move forward. And I'm fearful that we're going to get ahead of ourselves. We're spending a lot, like I said, we're spending a lot of money, and we keep saying we have so much money. We're spending a lot of money on a lot of different things. I just want to make sure we do a few things well right now. And when we finish those, then move on to the next thing and do that well. That's what I'm trying to
Can I
say.
ask you a question? So maybe I'm not understanding your point. So I take from Don that the location of the path and its design, where it goes, where it meanders, what it's made of, all that is fixed. And you're okay with that.
Yes.
And
But I'm not okay with a bare path.
well, no one is. No one is. But what I'm struggling with is if that, from an engineering perspective, is kind of a done deal, then all of us are highly interested, and it's 10 cooks in the kitchen here, in the aesthetics of the park elements. But what I don't understand is if the path is done and we're all happy with how it meanders and where it goes, but none of us are happy yet because we haven't seen it with the design. Why, since it's not going to change, why delay to make sure we get this done this summer? Because he's going to bid it out. Construction probably is not going to start till September, probably-ish. Yeah. And then we have a window. And so if we don't do it time, we lose 3 weeks to get it out and get it going. And that kind of pushes it. And even worse, you can't put the accoutrements, the park, until this is done, because it's construction equipment everywhere.
But I don't know if that's totally true. And also, my concern is then we sit for a year or however long with this bare path, and we haven't really done the work. And it just seems like we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're never really doing anything with a high degree of efficacy. We're doing everything like quick and good, and
Well,
it
well,
feels
that-
like, it
well,
feels
the
like
pa-
it's
let
gonna be
me-
good enough,
You
but
do.
maybe not so good.
But we've seen the path and where it's located, how it meanders multiple times.
Yeah.
And I think we're all good with that. So what I'm
Yes.
saying,
I guess I just feel like without the design that goes around it, it's
well, we're
it's
gonna,
not going to look good.
well, I agree, and we're all gonna work hard to make sure it looks great when it's finally implemented. My question is, putting that at risk of getting done this year, even if it's a bare path, there's a higher chance that the park could be implemented, at least in part, remaining this year before the weather turns bad. But unless we get the path constructed, the park is gonna have to wait
I
till
mean, I just
next
don't
year.
want to run. I don't want to rush the park. I want to make sure it looks great. And
I
I know
don't-
you do
I think
too.
everyone's in violent agreement with that.
And if we would have started sooner, I think we would have been on closer to parallel
But
tracks.
but we are where we are, and I'd rather get the path constructed
Yeah, I'm
this
still not
year.
happy that we're where we are. But that being said, I'm just really concerned that the path is going to be there and it's going to sit there, and then the MKSK piece is not going to be as beautiful as it was, because we're going to work on another piece of one of the sidewalks. Then there's going to be another project that's expensive.
I don't think we're gonna approve the MKSK design till we're all happy with, well, at least the
Well,
majority of us
that's
are
a
happy
fear.
with it.
That's a fear, right?
But
That's a
wouldn't you
fear.
rather get the path in place? So in the worst possible case, if we can't approve the MKSK plan in the spring, go right to it.
But we're moving forward on, we just approved Lander. I don't understand the rush on Gates Mills.
Only to get
Like
done. this-
we're,
I mean,
I-
listen, I thought Gates Mills should
we-
have come first. I wanted to work on this last summer.
But-
I'm sick
Why-
that we haven't started designing.
but Jim, I think that there's a saying, it's better to do it right than to do it right now. And I feel that this is a right now. When originally on our agenda, when we had a presentation that was going to show us what the project was going to be, okay, this makes sense. I feel like we're putting a little bit the cart before the horse. We haven't seen really where we're heading with this. And I would be more comfortable having the whole project, that I see the finished plan before I just say, well, let's put a path down there. And I agree, for the residents on Gates Mills, for them to be continually under construction, that we're putting in a path and then we're waiting and we're pausing and then we're meeting with the park planner. And, we're going to have parts of the city that are continually being disrupted. They deserve better. They deserve to see the entire project so that they can come in and weigh in on it. So I'm in agreement that until we see the whole thing, I'd like to know exactly what we're getting into on that. And I don't feel that we're there yet.
No, we're not there on the park part. I agree completely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we know what they're going back to tweak? Do we have any idea? And
Yeah.
then could any of their decisions affect the path of the trail or anything about the trail, the elevations,
No.
anything? Because they're putting in these berms and whatnot.
Any of those berm type elements, those types of things occur outside of the path. The path, we did the initial layout. We went through our layout with the landscape architect. We moved a couple things, a few feet here and there, but basically followed the original plan. And that's been set. They've been working around that path layout.
they won't change any
for the entire-
elevation.
No, there's a lot of the reasons that we choose where the path goes, and some of them are aesthetic, but they're also driven by safety and drainage and good sight distances around certain intersections. All of those things are set. So
Don.
the path is not going to change, and whether you change the elements of a retaining wall, or you want to make a mound a foot or two higher, or you want to do a different tree planting layout, none of those are going to impact the path. Also, I will say, the order of operation, 99% of the time, will be the contractor will get in and do the heavy lifting with the big equipment and put the path in. And then after that, they will come with separate crews, probably a separate company, even if you bid it as a single thing, and do the landscaping afterwards. That's just how it goes. So the time, duration, all those things are going to be weather dependent and that type of thing, which is something we always have to deal with. But the path will come first, and then they will go ahead and do the landscaping. They would never want to do landscaping and then follow with big pieces of equipment to install a path.
No, but you would want to get the path in, and then immediately upon completion, landscape it. And we're-
No, you would not necessarily do that.
Why?
Immediately upon completion of the path.
I mean, I don't mean the day
Well,
of.
right, but in terms of order of operation, there's weather and factors like that. You might do some additional earthwork. When they do the path, when they excavate to build the path, all the dirt they take out of that slot, we are going to capture that dirt and make mounds out of it. We're using that material as opposed to hauling it off. We're actually going to use material from the sidewalk excavation. So that material, so we can get a better price on the sidewalk, so a contractor doesn't have to haul it off site, and we're going to have them stockpile that material in the median. We've thought about all these different possible ways to make the job more efficient, save money, and from a timing standpoint, the contractor would much rather deal with a pile of dirt that's free on the site than have to haul in material. So all those things kind of get lined up.
Totally agree.
So you're not going to necessarily see, in August, they finish the path, and then in September, they're starting to plant flowers.
So the residents are, how long are the residents then going
Till
to have to
the
look at these
project
mounds
is
of
done,
dirt?
till the project is done. You
Well-
can't rush the construction. The contractor's motivated to get it done quickly. But again, get it done right as opposed to, rushing it.
That's
So-
why
so-
I'm saying maybe we're getting ahead, because if we are not ready, I understand. I just don't want dirt mounds and an unfinished path to sit there for 6, 9 months, a year, 18 months, and us not even knowing, by the way, the price when we're going into it. When we're already gonna, I would predict that all of a sudden it'll be next year and somebody's gonna say, and now we want to do this project and this project. And all of a sudden, we're getting into like many, many, many millions of dollars.
Well,
Now
And
we're
it's
talking about
just-
maintenance.
And
That's a separate
from-
issue, though.
from a timing
That's a separate
standpoint.
issue.
the
But
spending
it's the
issue,
whole project, Jackie.
No,
It's-
these like theoretical future projects, if they come up and we don't feel like we can afford them, then we don't do them. That's unrelated to this issue.
well,
we're
my
talking about.
concern is that it'll, just like this, it'll overlap. So we have the sidewalk project right now, right?
We have two
That
future.
should have come second. The Gates Mills should have come first. We should have already started this 6 months ago. And then we could be talking about this sidewalk now. Now, next year, we're gonna want to talk about a different sidewalk, is my guess. And Gates Mills is still gonna possibly be in process.
This is all budgeted for, right?
It's really, well, yes and no. It really is
We have
taking us
projections.
down.
Yes.
No, Melanie, truly, the answer is yes. It's not yes and no. These projects that Don's talking about.
I understand
we
they're
agree-
budgeted for.
But we don't have an
But
actual
But
cost.
based on some of the questions or concerns that you have, I honestly don't think you understand what I think Don's trying to
I
say
don't
here.
really appreciate you saying I don't understand. I
No, I
quite
said I
clearly
think,
understand. I quite
well, but
clearly understand.
these
Joe.
questions, for example, Don's been doing this for 30-some years. There is no rush to it. On a daily, certainly a weekly basis, we are talking about these projects and what we need to do and what order we're gonna do and how we're gonna get them done. So this isn't like the mayor called Don yesterday and said, let's get this done. To your point about the path being done earlier, we all agree. But what we were waiting for was a signed letter from the state giving us the grant dollars for us to proceed.
I understand we were waiting for the
So
state
that's
to
what held
give
it up.
us,
That's truly what held it up.
We got that in
waiting for the
February.
state to give us the grant dollars. I understand that, but there still has been a lag. And we were pretty certain we were gonna do the path no matter whether we got the grant dollars or not, to be quite clear.
That's not how we budgeted it though.
I understand, but we could have moved ahead with starting to plan. We could have. We've
No,
done it with.
without those grant dollars, there was no certainty we were doing this path.
I
whole
just-
We would have had to come
was
back for an extra
premised.
500 grand.
I
The whole
disagree
path was
with that.
premised on the idea that we were going to get a grant.
I disagree
And
with that
Mr.
because we don't
Gentili would
even
in
know,
fact say, well, if we don't get a grant, what are we doing?
we don't even
and-
know how much, if we're moving forward without knowing how much this huge piece of landscape architecture is. So that's a very interesting assessment. That's what I would say, because we are moving forward without a piece that could easily be comparable. So I don't understand how somebody makes that argument.
I have a question. How damaging to the process would it be if MK, SK, if they came in at the next meeting and we found, or we saw their proposal, how damaging would it be if we waited until next meeting to vote on this.
You're potentially jeopardizing the project happening this year.
And why couldn't they be here, or why couldn't they get us information sooner?
Right, how were they on the agenda then off?
They were on the agenda because they had hope, anticipation they could project it. They decided there was further revision to their project they wanted to do in order to make the most effective presentation to the city council that they could. Because they didn't want to be in any way less than excellent in what they were doing. So they asked, could we wait a month? And the question was, can we go ahead with this part? Because timing-wise, construction-wise, they said, yes, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That it just has nothing to do with the prettiness of the park and the design of the park. And there's just no reason not to proceed with this tonight. MKSK was selected by this council, by the way. They're not a surprise. That was foisted upon council. Council approved for the hiring of MKSK and that contract. That wasn't something that the administration on its own created. And that was, there's been a process. They were here in front of council. Council had an opportunity to interact with them in their initial presentation and gave them actually approval and go ahead to go further down the path of design that they were going down. They didn't do that on their own. There has been input by the city council to the entire process of MKSK's design, and they are now ready to come back. And they asked, could we have a pause? Would it be okay with you guys? And the answer is, since this path has to get bid and constructed beforehand, no, there is no interference with that process by their, being given that additional opportunity to improve the product that they want to present to the city council.
But the
I think they were
timeline,
appropriate
the
to it.
timeline was, and you or some people met with MKSK. They did a significant amount of work. There was visioning sessions, something like that happened. They came here with a full presentation. At that point, after they had already done a certain amount of work for which we would owe them money, council was then given a presentation that I hadn't even heard of MKSK or that we used them. We were not given, there was no RFP or RFQ put out there with different companies.
No, that's wrong. That's not correct.
Council didn't hear about different companies. Then they came with a single presentation to council. The beautification community didn't see them. Whoever saw them prior, council saw MKSK with a
I'm
full.
sorry, there was an RFP for different companies. Different companies came in, were interviewed. Mr. Newell was part of that interview process.
And I have no problem with MKSK. I thought they gave a very nice presentation. I thought as a first pass, their work looked good. And I would have liked to have, for council to have given them feedback prior to that. I think it would have been further along at that point. But I have no problem with MKSK as a company. I thought they did a great presentation.
Okay, Don, do you have something that you want to show?
Well, I could if you want. I do have the path layout and
Go ahead.
rendering.
Can I just ask a question? What's our ballpark budget for the whole project? Is it still
Joe, it's still in the area where it was.
1.7 million? Is that right?
We've got 1.2 in the budget for the path, of which 500 comes from the state.
Okay,
And then for the head ends into the path, we are using the $250,000 of ARPA funds that we received from the county.
okay.
But that
So-
won't, and then what about for the landscape architect work? All the other stuff?
That's right now, that's within the
Within the
$250,000.
Right.
And depending on the cost of the plants, et cetera. Melanie, I get your point, but to wait a month, as we sit here right now, there's no guarantee that when MKSK comes next month, that it's gonna be a done deal, a finished product, let's roll with it.
That's my
So,
point.
no, but that's the landscaping part. So let's say for some reason it's not, and that carries to August. Now we gotta wait for the path to August. We're not building a path this year. And before the end of the year, we would end up with probably hiring somebody to build the path, but can't do the path because of the weather. I'm not getting my $500,000 in, of which we had budgeted. That's why it made more sense to let's get the court down, if you will, and then we'll put the chairs around in the arena. We've got time for that, because some of the trees and some of the plants that they're gonna recommend are not recommended to be done until the fall.
I understand when you plant trees. I'm just saying that this is not like chairs and furniture. This is I would hope at a higher level. I would hope it's a lot more.
No, we're just trying to give an
significant.
analogy that
I understand.
one
that's
is
just
not
the wrong-
dependent on the other. Actually, the landscaping is probably more dependent on the path, because that's where they're gonna place it around the path. But the path is not
So do you,
dictating.
and do you
Mr.
feel
Chairman,
confident
one
that
more.
we're not gonna go anywhere more than like 5 or 10% over $250,000? Like that will cover everything That's off.
For the park?
For the whole park?
No,
Because-
that's gonna go way
So
over
then what's
that.
the real number? Tell us the real number.
How many trees you want? If you want 1,000,000 trees, there's a number. If you
Yeah.
want 500 trees,
Well, I
there's a
think-
number.
Melanie, at a prior meeting, you said you have no problem with spending, if we have to spend $300,000 more for trees, that's what we ought to do.
I have no
Because you
problem.
want it to be as beautiful as we
I want it
can.
to be
We all
beautiful,
agree.
but I just want the number.
So I have a question.
I
The
would prioritize this.
The 1.2 million,
Yes, sir.
is that just installation of the path? I apologize, Tony. The 1.2, and I'm taking the floor. The 1.2 million, is that just for the path, or did that include landscaping in it?
That's just for
It is
that.
just to install
That's
the asphalt,
Yep.
nothing else.
So my question for Mr.
Thank you, Tony.
Mr. Sheehy is there anything in what you've done so far that leads you to believe that the budget of $1.2 million is adequate or inadequate?
I think for the path, I think it's adequate.
Okay.
We're still operating with that being
All right.
the accurate budget.
All right.
I will say that, taking advantage of good weather and being in the heart of the construction season, it would be nice to get this thing underway August or September and having the path done then.
Okay.
The landscaping is, I know people, you do want to kind of group them together, but it really is a separate activity that could be more or less elaborate depending on how much you want to spend. Part of the MKSK discussion and part of the reason why, they're not here tonight is they're trying to get accurate pricing and updated information and looking at, stone samples and stuff from quarries and all that stuff. So they're trying to be fair to this body to make sure that they're giving you an accurate number. They don't want to show you an $800,000 plan and say, do you like this? And you're like,
Well,
"It's
that's
great."
exactly my point. If you were building a house, you wouldn't just say, build me a house. You would say, here's about how much I'm spending on the house. Or you'd say, what is that house? How much does that house cost? So I'm just trying to find out what the MKSK with plus or minus $100,000 is going to cost.
Right.
Is it a 500? That's what I'm really asking on that piece of it. Is it a $500,000 project? Is it a $2 million project?
If you break out their piece, the reality of it is, I'll say
Then
this
you
and
need
be
to give me
picked
the
on,
answer.
but the reality of it is that the floor for MKSK is zero. You could spend nothing on landscaping, you just have the lawn.
I know,
And it
but
wouldn't be bad, but it wouldn't be anything that you envisioned. It would be the
bad.
gateway. It wouldn't be bad, but it wouldn't have any style. So it would be feasible. You can build the path and it would still be it'd be utilitarian and functional, but it wouldn't have the gateway that you want.
It's not what we
So the
want.
250, the thought was that 250 provides you those gateways, provides you those moments along the path to make it something special.
So the
And
mayor.
then beyond that, you have how much do you want to spend on trees and screening? Do you want this to be a dense forest or a combination of forest and open space? The species that you select, the size that you select, the sky's the limit.
I guess what I was saying is MKSK presented us with something and what they showed us, I was just wondering what the price tag was on that. They showed us something and there has to be a general price tag on that stone, on the trees that weren't so small, on the no-mow grass, on some of the smaller plantings. There is a number and someone who does that could eyeball it and come up with a pretty good idea of the number. I can't because I don't do that. And that's really what I'm
What
asking.
you saw was generally, and Donald, check me on this, what you saw generally, and it wasn't described out in detail, was roughly in that $250,000 to $300,000 type plus or minus.
That was their target, so to speak, their,
Yes.
Yeah,
start
that
was
was
just,
sort
the
of,
baseline
yeah,
is 250 to 300.
yeah, but I don't know that that's really going to give you the,
That vision was only $250,000. I find that just impossible to believe, like with the planting and the stone and everything. I really do.
That's where they were at, yeah.
that's
I
where
mean,
they're at.
I'd like to say a couple of things. I've listened to all of this. I was part of this process very early on.
Talk as loud as you can, Scott, just the mask I can't hear.
I'm sorry. I have listened to the arguments tonight, and I've listened to what Don feels are the upsides of doing this now. I've listened to your concerns and everybody else's concerns. I have yet to hear any compelling reason that we should delay this. I understand that you'd like to see the whole thing, but what happens if you don't like what they say? Or does that mean we're killing the project?
No, it means we keep working on it. I just don't want the people who live there to sit for a year or year and a half with dirt mounds and a plain asphalt path in front of their house.
On the other hand, would you like the people in the community to be able to enjoy the whole thing earlier?
But will they be able to enjoy it without us seeing it to completion? Like
They could still walk the path, it just won't be.
but
as
then we're going to
pretty.
be closing it to landscape stuff. It's
Well,
like,
sure.
it's not going to be really
I
open
just don't,
to use.
I don't want it to look like a mess for a year and a half. I don't think it's fair to the people who live there. And that's my concern. I mean, I'm willing to go on the goodwill of my fellow council people to that we will do this at a high level. I'm willing to take everybody's word that we're not just going to throw a path in there with grass, because we committed to the people who live along Gates Mills that this was not going to look like that this was going to be something more special.
And I appreciate that you are concerned about these things. I guess what I'm not hearing is convincing argument that we shouldn't go ahead with building the trails now. And even if it takes a little bit longer for the rest of the path, I don't see the advantage that we get out of that.
I mean, I don't want to rush it. I want to make sure it's
I know, but tell me
beautiful.
what the advantage is.
The only advantage is that we are not subjecting the community and the people that live there. Two things. One is that we're not subjecting the people who live there to living in a disastrous looking construction site. So I drove down Shaker Boulevard for a full year with it being a disaster.
Can I stop you there? Don, how would you characterize how it's going to be?
It's really a totally different process. You know, I mean, Shaker, I'll say this again, Shaker Boulevard, we put a sanitary sewer 20 some feet deep down the middle of an active roadway.
Mhm.
Nasty project, and replaced a huge chunk of storm sewer, and we had water line breaks, all that stuff. It was a mess. There's no cars driving down the center of Gates Mills Boulevard. The work where the path is occurring is at least 25, 30 feet, and in most cases, 60, 70 feet away from the edge of the pavement.
I know.
It's a much more confined area. And the people that live on that, you know, they're not really out in the middle of Gates Mills Boulevard now. They're not, you know, not that they can't.
They
but-
see it though, you know,
Well, there's no avoiding that. There's no avoiding having those pieces of equipment go up and down. I can tell you that when you're digging down 20 some feet, to do 100 feet in a day is really good progress. When they're carving out a 6-inch deep slot down a road, they're gonna do all the excavation in 2 weeks. And they're gonna put stone. The path is gonna go in maybe 2 months. Now, the landscaping could take more or less depending on how much you put in. Certain trees are fall plants, certain trees are spring plants, all that stuff.
And that's my second concern is, to your point, Scott, and I guess I would take everybody on their word that we're going to do this really nicely, because we don't have a price tag on it. I'm fearful that this is going to be a lot more expensive than we think it is. There was a lot of really nice stone in there. You know, I looked at it again a few times. It's very nice. I mean, is everything perfect to my aesthetic? Maybe not, but I think it's really nice.
And all that's great, and I
some
agree.
nice
It's gonna be
sized
really
trees that
nice.
aren't like this big that,
But
you know.
what I'm not hearing, unfortunately,
Mhm.
is the advantage that we get from waiting.
So I have a question. Don, when were the plans actually complete that these could have gone to bid?
My plans?
Yeah.
We're still working on them right now. I mean, they're 98% complete, but we went back and forth today with some details on some curb ramp stuff and things like that.
So they're not quite done. So we
The
couldn't
plan,
have
the
bid this
plans,
any
I
sooner,
can
is
bid the
my
plans
question.
next week. So,
But we couldn't have bid this sooner?
no, you couldn't have been it last month, no. And we still have to get, well, we've coordinated all of our efforts back and forth with MKSK because we want to make sure that our specifications are complementary, that we're not missing something or doing something twice between what we're having done under our contract and what MKSK is doing. So those are coordination issues, but it doesn't change the design.
And you're 100% sure that that coordination is at a point that there are no changes? Like 100%?
Yes, on my end.
There is nothing.
No, my end is set. What would change would be if if MKSK, increases a planting area or changes some configuration of a retaining wall, but it wouldn't impact where the path goes. It would be those would be more aesthetic decisions made, in collaboration with discussions with council.
With the proviso that we're gonna do this well, I think we all want to do it well. I think that going ahead and approving this process for Don gets this done sooner rather than later than any other way that I can conceive of. If we waited a month, we would be a month further down the line. And the landscaping couldn't start for at least another month further out. So I think that we're all in agreement that we want it done well. I'm also afraid that the $250,000 budget might be inadequate, and that's a decision we make at the time.
We're in
Whether we-
control of that.
Whether we want to go 250, that's it. We're going to cancel 10 trees, or we're going to do 300 because that's what we want to do. But I think that I've heard it all, and I've, listened to what Scott said, and I agree with Scott. Heard nothing that gets this done any better or any quicker than approving this and going forward with this. And I'm relying on Don and Joe to say that we're within the budget. It's my job, according to the mayor, to worry about the money all the time, even more than I worry about the money all the time.
Me too.
So,
Okay.
I think for my money, my opinion is that we should probably go ahead with this.
Dawn, can we see your presentation?
It's not all that exciting, but sure.
And then how, you mentioned the dirt from Lander will go to Gates Mills. How does that that process work? So then will the contractors be working simultaneously so they know where to put the dirt? Or are we just gonna mount? I know you know where to put the dirt from Lander, but how's that gonna work? Because if we just approve Lander and we don't approve Gates Mills for a little while, then is that going to throw everything off? Is that why we're doing?
We have the ability to be flexible on those things. Typically, things like I just mentioned, we bid alternate items. So we try to go through some likely scenarios. Instead of the contractor importing dirt, what's the alternate to save if we provide X number of cubic yards on site? And we'll, specify a few areas where that material will be. Then when they bid the contract, they'll give us the base price, and then they'll say, you could save $30,000 if you've already dropped 1,500 cubic yards of material at point A. That's how we handle this.
Kind of have to go.
We've already anticipated that. We've already got it baked into our specs, and we don't have to do it if we don't do it. If the material coming out from the sidewalks is terrible, or the contractor has a different location he wants to take it, and there's no value for us to do that, then we won't do it. But we're trying to get a better price on both projects. So by, creating a place for them to drop material off, they're not hauling it off.
It's a win-win.
Hauling it, right. So then we're saving on both projects.
Is
That's
it
how we try.
feasible that the same contractor could do both and we can get a bargain?
It's not going to be that same contractor, because the concrete contractor is not going to be the asphalt contractor.
Oh.
Two different
right.
worlds, yes. All right.
Is that your condo up there on that left one?
Yeah. They're still working on it in that picture.
That one's leaning a little bit, I think.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, that looks all right. All right. This is the trail. This is what we've talked about a number of times. I do have the MKSK rendering, at least in plan view, is shown in here with the trailheads. So you're looking at, sort of zoomed in, that's the circle at Brainerd. And, you know, the darker green trees are the trees that are there right now. So I'm just kind of moving on to, there's a little bit of a crossing about midway through. We have an area where there's an opportunity to do a little bit of a presence with some retaining walls and a little bit of fill. But again, that's we've chosen the location to cross that street as a good sight distance location. Again, we're working on going through those existing groves of trees and trying to minimize the impact. We've worked around the existing grades, preserved as many trees as possible.
Don, did that changed from the original plan, right? Because before it was on the outside over there towards the houses.
No, we didn't have it when we first applied for funding. We didn't have a definitive location. We picked our way through that woods and developed.
Because I have it up here on the city website, and that grove of trees, which I was driving by earlier today, it was on the street side, and I like it like this better.
Yeah.
Going through.
Yeah, no, this was once we did the detailed tree survey and
Mhm.
located all the trees that we found a
Good.
nice
I like
path.
that better.
Yeah, I think it's a really going to be a nice feature, and it's a nice quiet spot there.
Yeah.
So then it continues on, generally meandering, but mostly in the center. I'm going to zoom out for a second. Sorry for the. So this is where they're kind of calling this area Kersdale Crossings, which is, you know, a fairly quiet location, but it is where those two side streets, the two ends of Kersdale crosses over. They think that this is a really pretty vista. You know, if you're standing there, you can see a long way. You're sitting up a little bit, and it's just a nice area to do what they've got shown. And they're trying to create a little bit of an intimate space while you also have the vista. Then it continues to head to the northeast. They've shown the landscape plan and put in a little bit of water there, but that's the Gates Mills detention basin that Regional Sewer District has designed, you know, where we're kind of on the southern edge of that. And then we cross, and again, another spot, we work through the woods, and then we're out to Lander Road. So I'm going to go to the next slide. This is the bit. So the bottom left of the slide is where we're at Gates Mills Boulevard, and then we wrap around a portion of the circle, and then we head north up Lander Road to really the front entrance of Ursuline College, and that's the path. That portion is pretty linear. It runs basically parallel to the road. We're dealing with existing utility poles. Not a lot of room for meandering. It is a little bit plain, but that's
And that
it.
one's the concrete 5 feet.
No, that's the asphalt path. That's 10 feet wide shown there. Yeah. So, and then this is just giving you guys boring engineering stuff. There's little vertical curves there for the road so that the bicycles or riders or joggers are comfortable when they're riding along or doing whatever they're doing. And that's how we laid it out. That's some of the grading. And we've got 30 sheets that look like this that don't mean a whole lot to
Absolutely
non-engineers.
fascinating, Don. What are you
Yes,
talking
yeah.
about?
We'll start going over catch basin details next. So, but that's it. So that's the plan. And
Don, can I ask
Yeah.
a question about
Sure.
that circle picture? If you
Yes.
can put it back up.
Yep.
So then the Lander sidewalk is coming from this way,
yes,
and then it's 5 feet concrete,
correct.
and then it's going to the left to meet up with the kind of like the road at Gates Mills there.
Right.
So we're going to transition from a 5 foot to a 10-foot path.
At the crosswalk, it'll be a 5 foot on one side and a 10 foot on the other side. So yeah.
Do you want the sidewalks to be 10 feet, Kathy?
Is that what you're asking for?
No, I just want the same. I just want to understand, like, aesthetically, it would be better to have concrete all around the circle or something, like the same thing around the circle
Yeah,
and the
I,
same width around the circle aesthetically. I just don't understand why one side of the circle is treated differently than the other side of the circle for aesthetic reasons. Can
Well-
we make that?
you can't make the
Wonder-
path any smaller. So whatever we've got shown there, it has to be 10. So your answer would be, you'd have to go 10 on the sidewalk if you're trying to match. You can't go this, you can't take this to 5. Cannot.
Why?
You cannot get the $500,000 if you
Can
do
we
not.
ask
show that.
them because of aesthetic reasons?
It's not a path, and they don't care about aesthetics. They want safety and utility, and that's what this
Well, we should have
provides.
just stopped the path there then and then.
Well, it's got to take you somewhere. Try to think about this as if your means of transportation was the bicycle, and you rode your bike, and then all of a sudden it stopped and you couldn't get anywhere. You can't stop the path at some weird spot. It needs to connect to something.
I'm sorry, but that's gonna look ugly.
You will not notice it. You will not notice
Transitions at the street.
it. You won't notice it. The transition is the
And
crosswalk.
we're gonna put lots of trees so you can't even see it. Right there. 'cause
We're not going to plant trees
Tree in the
right in
circle.
the
Not
circle.
in the circle, but like around. I don't know, but
If have you ever? It's not the same type of thing, but at Pinecrest, there are sections where the sidewalk is 5 feet wide.
uh-huh.
You cross from one side of the street to the other, and the sidewalk is 8 feet wide. And nobody says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this." It's
But it's the same type of
they
sidewalk.
they change materials too.
Asphalt.
Yeah.
To,
You can't design 50 miles of path to all be identical. There's going to be spots where it's going to change material. And I think this is, you're far enough away from the edge of the pavement, and you do have some opportunity to soften the look of the path.
But it'll look like a
We do it
road.
Right now at Brainerd.
Yeah,
You do
Brady?
it right now at Brainerd. You don't see it, but you do it.
10 feet wide.
No, it's a circle. In the middle of the circle, it's asphalt and it's concrete sidewalks up to it.
I'm just worried about the width.
And no one's ever noticed.
And no one's ever said a
Yeah.
word.
Don, is that the
Anybody
end of your
else
slides?
answer?
Yeah, that's the end of the slide. I mean, but this is the function, and this is why why it's funded, because they want people to have two-way traffic on this thing and be able to be safe about it.
All right, those are Don's slides. Does anyone want to make a motion to authorize to start this? bid
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Zajac,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Goldick,
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentile.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Thank you, council, and thank you for your careful consideration of it.
I'd like to add that I have always supported this project, and my concerns were for the residents and for the best outcome of the project. And that's why I raised this question. So
And I
I
feel.
look forward to moving forward on this.
I feel similarly. I mean, my biggest concern is with the way it looks. We've made a strong commitment to a high aesthetic. I think that sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and it's a little self-congratulatory. There's nothing that I get more complaints about than the way the circle looks. And that's because we did it ourselves. And I'd really like to do this better.
Well, actually, we didn't do it ourselves. We did it with a landscape architect.
Okay, well.
And and if anything about our landscaping, I get the most compliments about, respectfully, is that circle. I had someone at the Taste of Pepper Pike come up to me and say, I really didn't want you to do that circle. I wrote to you, I didn't want you to do that circle the way you designed. And I just have to say, you were right. So we get different people talking to us.
I got something else and I wasn't even on console. So it's, telling me about how there's so many weeds and we should have planted it differently. And I said,
Okay.
I'm not in charge of that.
Okay.
There's only so much.
All right. Next on our agenda is a discussion on appointment of Charter Review Commission, mostly to bring the public up to speed. The council is still going through a process of this consideration of many applications, and we hope that by the end of July, we'll have a vote on it. Okay? So that's the public
That's
update
it.
regarding it. We had the committees. We had a finance committee tonight.
We did have a finance committee tonight, went over the budget with Joe, really on track, both on revenues and expenses. General fund continues to grow nicely, and we're taking advantage of the high interest rates with our excess funds. That is contributing to the budget. And so no other peculiarities or anomalies to report.
I had a question. It seemed that the income tax, if I'm remembering correctly, is a bit behind,
A bit ahead,
a bit ahead.
slightly ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. No other committees.
Is that behind our budget or behind?
Ahead of budget.
Oh,
Sorry,
but it's behind last year.
Yeah.
It's behind
ahead of
last year.
budget, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any feel yet how it'll end up the year, if we'll be behind last year or ahead?
I talk with him at least every other week to see if there are any issues for us to be aware of. He calls, he emails if he sees stuff.
Okay, so, What do
Right
you-
now, nothing.
We're looking good.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
Department heads.
Moving along with our hiring process, we've done some interviews now, we have 12 candidates we're looking at, and we're off to a good start.
And you should mention Joe joining the department.
Yeah, Joe's officially on board, he graduated from the academy.
That's Joe Popoff,
Joe Popoff.
who you met at one time. He's finished his academy. He's finished his, is he done with FTO? No.
No, he's starting the FTO program.
And, but he did outstanding in the police academy. He was the president of his class. He won a number of honors in it, and he is just going to make a wonderful contribution to our police department, and we're very proud and pleased to have him join us.
And just to be clear, the interview process we're talking about, that's for the 18th that we had.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. The chief was able to get the, what is that vehicle called? Not an urban assault vehicle. What is it called?
It's something,
Like stripes.
it's a command and rehab vehicle.
Yes, yes. It's an impressive unit, very impressive. And I thank you for arranging to have that available to help the people at the Taste of Pepper Pike if they needed, aid. If it had been 100 degrees that day, we may have people retreating into that. I know that was your thought in having it out there. So thank you for doing that. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. You want to talk more, Don?
Good for a while.
Okay. Of course, we had the Taste of Pepper Pike last weekend. It was wonderfully successful. And appreciate all the council members and the members of the public who came out to support it. And looking forward to doing it again next year. We have a movie event coming up. It's on the sign. I don't know is
July
it
the
Friday?
12th, I think.
Is it on Friday?
No, it's not until July, July the 12th, I believe.
The movie?
Yeah, it's.
Okay, it's going to be well advertised by then. Okay.
Marvels.
Okay. We won't see each other before the July 4th holiday. So I wish everybody a wonderful 4th and a commitment to the democracy and its principles that were hard fought and won back in the 18th century. I won't give a speech about it. I'll get teary. I'm not going to do it.
We'll let it go this time, Mr. Mayor.
Council, anything?
I have one question. When the architect returns with a potential second presentation, is it possible to get that posted on the website so that people watching at home are able to follow along since they can't see the
Right,
screen?
right. The reason that,
And I know that was like, I'm sure the timing was all short and everything, but I don't know if that's something that in the future is able to.
yeah,
be
so long as we can get it in
Yeah.
advance enough, certainly. The one that he showed us, Becky has been on vacation And she really controls that ability to post something like that.
Yeah.
Up on the website. So that's why when she gets back, is it tomorrow?
Yes,
Tomorrow or Friday, when she catches up, she'll be able to get the prior one
great.
up on the site.
And in addition, if we could have a copy sent to us as well?
Yeah.
Before the meeting?
Yeah, so long as we have it.
Yeah, if it's possible, yeah.
Could we also get Don's presentation tonight posted on the web? Because I think that's a nice
Sure.
update to the trail.
Sure, we will.
It's very exciting. I like how it meanders through the trees
Yeah.
now. And then if we can have
We
that to
will.
share.
We'll do that too. Can you make a note of that? Thank you.
I don't feel that good about that.
All righty. Anything else, council, audience? Richard?
Now, I spend more time looking at that boulevard than 99% of the people because our kitchen table looks out on it. And I'll go to the kitchen table. It might be back so often. And my computer, the laptop, that's where I spend a lot of time reflecting on a couple of things. One of the things is I'm an admitted tree lover, and I see the Dayton Boulevard as a great opportunity to increase the tree canopy in the city. And I would like to see a lot of effort put into that, and maybe even a forecast about that would develop depending on what we plan. Because there are some things I like about the design that's been proposed. I love the meandering path. I think the circle here, the blue salvia, is to die for. But there are other aspects. I do not like the tall grass because I think it distracts from the appearance of a park. And also, there are a lot of people who use the median now because it is grass. There are people who like to run on grass, jog on grass, walk on grass, hike on grass, and generally meander on grass. And I think this design unduly restricts that. And I also think that it's gonna present a long-term maintenance problem because grass is simple, you got it. Yeah, weeds growing it, but basically you contain it. When stuff starts growing in long grass, it becomes a really serious maintenance problem. And if you think stuff won't grow in tall grass, it will. And I know I'm taking a little bit of time, but a couple of weeks ago, I was out at the woodland program at Open Arboretum because they have about 70 acres of research woodland. So I was having a tour, and some of it is near an open field of grassland. And the guy said, I'd take you out there to look back at the woods this winter, but it's full of poison ivy. Okay, and you wouldn't think poison ivy would grow in a big grass or grow in a hay field, but it will. And as other stuff starts to grow in there, I think that's going to be a maintenance problem. And especially if somebody isn't checking it almost weekly, which is not going to happen, as you know. So I would reconsider that. I also think aesthetically, being ball grass, it does look a bit better. Now, the mounding and the meandering and some of the flower structures, like I'm a big fan of the blue salvia. I think they're very nice, but I think that the tall grass has nothing aesthetically. People on the street who want to get on the trail have to walk through it to get to the path. I mean, to me, it's a linear walkway, and with this design, it's not a linear park. So that's my feeling on it.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Anyone else? Manny?
Manny Nash, 2632 Sound Center. I'm really taken aback by the comment after all the things that the city went through with approving the Gates Mills Boulevard Trail and the sidewalks and so forth on here. totally taken aback with the statement that the only reason why we went ahead with the Gates Mills Boulevard Trail is because there's a $500,000 grant that was out there. This is absolutely amazing to me. For 20 years, for 40 years, there was conversations, people came into city council identifying that we needed more walking capability within the city, and what could we do to have it? And after years of nothing happening, wasn't on any agendas and things like that, other than it was occasionally brought up at the, at Scott's, committee meeting on there about people wanting, sidewalks. Then the item came in a parachute that because there was a $500,000 grant out there, I think it was February 17th of 2021, maybe was it, don't quote me on the exact time on here. But that was the first time that there was ever any discussion about adding sidewalks to the city of Pepper Pike, okay? Because of all these different concerns that people had about walking within the city on here. And now to hear, after all this fruition on here, that the only reason why we finally went ahead with this is because the $500,000 grant was there, and that we weren't committed to be doing something to this. We're totally being totally disingenuous to this population in regards to, it's this program on the Gates Mills Boulevard Trail. And again, that was the first one. That was the first walkability. That was the first sidewalks. The Lander Road that's happening now is the second one because it ties in, to that trail. And all this discussion about sidewalks and all the different, things that we had going on, and we had 3 surveys, that went out to, to people on what was going on. And to say now back to the people that the only real reason why we're doing this out here because the $500,000 grant was out there. This whole thing in regards to how much money the city has and doesn't have, and the city does have a lot of funds. And we need to prioritize where we're spending the dollars and have an agreement on what needs to be done. Do we need sidewalks, or is it only because there was a $500,000 grant, that was out there? This is disingenuous, okay? So the item is, the city spoke and the citizens spoke through 3 surveys out there. And to what, was stated, this project is, I'll say probably a year later than it should be, because the council, when we first heard about this, the first time they said, we want to survey the people and find out what the people's input is in regards to sidewalks and walkability, within the city. And then all the mastications that went on with the surveys and why we ended up with having 3, and then, all the different things that happened after that. This whole program, could have been, should have been, earlier. But the overall statement right now, for council to say, and it's on record now, for tonight's meeting, that it's only because that there's $500,000 grant that was there, that we're finally going ahead with all of this. Not that this is what the city really needs, for walkability. I think you need to make some clarifications to some folks. So, sorry to go on, but this is.
Well, that's not at all what was said, Manny, but everyone hears, I guess, what they want to hear or can hear in a meeting. Because the conversation, you said some clarification. I'm going to provide you some clarification. What was said during this meeting was simply a reference back to the time when, without that $500,000 grant, that was a significant consideration for certain members of this council, or maybe all the members of the council, not the people sitting here necessarily, that without that grant, would the council want to go ahead with that project? Yes, other things have occurred since that time. But that's what was being said. And you have to put everything in the context of where it was at that point in time and what the considerations for that project were, which is very separate from the considerations of the other sidewalks that have now been voted upon and are now proceeding in the city. Any other comments? All right, not hearing any, we stand adjourned.
You happen to know who you're talking about?
I'm like having a rough time. So I have,
Because I just say, you're working, you're studying, I got more time.
yeah,
I
but the
could
thing
schedule
is,
these.
I also have flexibility, which is nice, So yeah, let me get to you tomorrow. Do you have yours?
I'm gonna research them.
Yeah, but right, as of right, these are people you want to interview, right?